I'm Karaleigh Garrison, and this is Seeking Sunshine, where we find the positive in the trials of life. There are times when life just brings you down, 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 down to the ground. And it's hard when you can't see the light, 'cause things don't look so bright. So now it's time to reframe and retrain your brain. It's time to look for the good. You know that you should. Why don't you join me? 'Cause I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. Oh, oh, oh. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. Do you like this song as much as I do? Ooh, it just gives me goosebumps and makes me want to dance. I am in love with this new version of Seeking Sunshine. This is the title song for my album that is going to come out probably around next February. If you want more information, please sign up and subscribe for emails from my website. My website is KaraleighGarrison.com. Are you looking for ways to support my podcast? If so, then please like it, subscribe it, and leave it a review. Did you know that if you leave a review, it helps my podcast get shown to more people? I would so appreciate it if you could leave some words in the review box and let people know. Share this with your friends and family and just tell them about the episodes that you really like and some of the takeaways that you've personally received and that have helped you out. Do you have a story to share? I would love to interview you for my podcast. I want to hear all about you and what you've been through and how you've been able to seek sunshine in your journey. Please reach out to me. You can send me a message in DMs on social media, or you can even send me an email at KaraleighGarrison@gmail.com. I would love to talk to you. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Seeking Sunshine podcast. This is actually our very first episode of 2023. Yay! I actually cannot believe that it's already the new year. I feel like 2022 just flew by and it's all a blur to me now. Anyways, maybe I'm the only one who feels like that. Maybe it's kind of universal. I feel like time is just going by faster and faster and faster these days. So anyways, today's our first episode of the year, and we have a really amazing guest. Her name is Mel Findlater. She is so cool. I really, really loved talking with her, and she is just such an amazing person. She's got this gorgeous energy and just uplifting mindset about like motherhood and creativity and how to keep going when things are tough. She's just awesome. So she's a mother of two, and she loves connecting moms with their big, audacious dreams through coaching, community, and creating a space of playful possibility. I feel like we have so much in common in that way, because I feel like as a mom, we're kind of like taught that once you're a mom, like that's your whole life. Like nothing else is supposed to exist outside of motherhood. Like all the passions and dreams that you had before you had kids just sort of go on the back burner because your kids are your life. And like, yes, my kids are my everything, but like but that's no way to live. Like we have to remember who we are even in motherhood. And that's what it actually inspires our kids to follow their own dreams and to, take care of themselves and all the things. So anyways, this is a really cool conversation. Mel believes that what the world needs most is moms who are flourishing, and that it's us that are going to make the biggest impact. So I'm just super excited to have her here. Welcome, Mel. It's just lovely to have you. Hello, Mel. I'm so excited to have you here today on the Seeking Sunshine podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's so great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive right in. I want to hear your story and all about you and how you've become the just amazing person that you are today.
Yeah, that's such a big question. Story. What would you like to know? So I'm Mel, obviously. We'll give a little intro bit there. So I live on Vancouver Island. I'm a mom of two kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I used to live in England for 14 years, and we
Well, that's
decided,
like so cool.
yeah, well, I mean, it was great. We went there for 1 to 2 after university and never, well, we obviously left, but it took a long time to leave. And we had our kids there and we bought a house there, and life was just life, really, in another country. And we finally decided to move back to Canada. And it ended up happening in March 2020, which we all know what
Right
happened in
in the
March 2020.
middle. Yeah, right in
The beginning,
chaos.
like, to be honest. So it was a really interesting journey over here. And before that, my son was only, let's see, he was just under 2 when we moved, and then my daughter was just turned 5. And even as soon as my son was born, things were like harder. Like, people say 2 kids is like twice as hard. It's like 10 times at least as hard. Especially when, my daughter, they're both amazing kids and different in totally different ways. And my daughter was what many people told me was the easy baby and the easy child. And I was just like, well, no, what child is easy? It's still hard work. But she was quiet, and she was, she'd just kind of sit there and let you do your work, get on with life. And then I have my son, who is a boisterous, very large feeling in every direction boy who just switched things around, I remember having a 3-year-old and sitting on this big chair and trying to nurse my newborn and my 3-year-old climbing on my back. And I had never been frustrated with her before that. She just wasn't that kid. And I was so frustrated because I realized at that moment I couldn't meet both their needs at the same time. And
Oh, it's such
right.
a difficult place when you're just starting. Because so my first two are 14 months apart, and my
Mm-hmm.
my oldest, my daughter, so easy, so easy, just like yours. I totally relate. Like, quiet. I used to have my own business, and I would go to craft fairs and sell jewelry, right, that I had made. And I could do all of it with her. I'd take her to college classes with me, and she would just happily be quiet. And then my son came along, and he was the opposite. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
And it was really hard those first few years, especially in those infant years, right? And I think just that transition of looking back, it was that moment that I realized I couldn't meet both needs. And as a mom, that's like, you want to meet everybody's needs, including your own, right? So I didn't meet my own for a while after that. And had lots of stories that I told myself along the way throughout that, right? And all at the same time, I also had ankle surgery. I play soccer, so I had done ligaments in my ankle, so I decided to have surgery and try to look after both children. And it was all a little crazy, to be honest. So that led to us deciding to move back to Canada, though, and needing that support network. Both of our families are Canadian, and we needed to be surrounded by people who could help us out. And while my family's in Alberta and I'm in BC, we have to drive for 12 hours to get to each other. At least we're still in the same, well, almost the same time zone.
Well, it's not the same as flying to England. Like, it's just not the same.
Exactly. And I can fly over there in an hour as opposed to before, 9.5 hours. And when your time zones are actually, like, England's 8 hours ahead of us, it means that conversations are actually really hard to have with little children with bedtimes and stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely.
as much as I had some great friends in England, it wasn't the same as having someone that you can be. Like, my mom just left last week because she came here for 2 weeks because my husband had to go away for work for a week. She's like, I'll come, we'll drive the kids to school, I'll pick them up. Like, I was like, that's amazing. That's exactly
That
what I
is
needed.
beautiful. I love that.
So yeah. So it was definitely hard times, and moving in during a pandemic is not a recommended course of action, I have to say.
I doesn't sound like it. And it
But
wasn't just like moving is the worst. Like, I've just, like,
yeah,
hands down, I hate moving. It
yeah,
sucks. And somehow we've moved every like 3 years. But it's awful and it's extremely stressful, but to move from a different country,
Yeah.
like that is an entire extra layer of stress. And then you add the pandemic on top of that, and it's just forget about it. Like that's
Yeah.
wild.
So
So
we had planned to go in the April. We moved a month earlier because like Trudeau's saying like Canadians, if you want to come home, you might want to do it now. We're like, oh my gosh. So we moved our flight 3 times. We had to, because we had to sell our house in that time. So then we had to bring a bunch of stuff, like ship it in a shipping container over to Canada. But you know, I look back at it all and I think we are so lucky that nothing went wrong. Like nothing went wrong. Like really, like I mean, there was things, but nothing that couldn't be handled, right? So we changed our flight 4 times, and then we eventually got on the flight. We managed to get the shipping company to come and get our stuff. And then like 2 weeks later, they weren't allowed to work anymore, right?
that's like so miraculous. That's what
It's
I so love
yeah.
about like this seeking sunshine concept, is that as we look back, we're like, oh my gosh, I really was like
Mm-hmm.
taken care of through this whole thing. Like, yeah, it was
Yeah.
hard. And in the moment it was so stressful. But like
Yeah.
we were just led, and it just worked out beautifully. That's just incredible. I love that.
For sure. And there's so many little things like that along the way. Like we were able to sell our house shortly after that. You weren't allowed to do house viewings or anything like that. England was super, super strict at the beginning with the pandemic stuff. And like you couldn't leave your house other than to go for 1 walk a day from your door, kind of, or to the grocery store or doctor. But yeah, so it was, we were just like amazed that we got here. And there weren't masks or anything yet. Like nobody got sick. We were just so, so lucky to have made it to where we did. And then we lived with my parents-in-law for who lived nearby us for like 3 months and found a house, and everything kind of worked out. But you know, we moved across the world, and I had no friends over here anymore. You know, they all moved on to their own things, and it was really hard for that first year. Like I look back and I'm like, oh, 100% I was depressed. Like I didn't really think I was at the moment because I just got on with life and did things. But um, I think that's why I'm so big into connection now as like a key theme. Like we need as humans to be connecting with other human beings,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And that's one of those
Yeah,
things. It's like you moved in the middle, like right at the beginning of the pandemic, which means that like
yeah,
you got there and it was like, okay, everyone is home, no one's connecting, no events are
yeah,
happening, like
yeah,
everything is canceled. So you didn't even have like an opportunity to make friends or to meet people.
yeah. Like it would have been hard anyways, but it was like extra hard because everybody didn't want to meet other people because like we're told not to, right? So yeah, that was definitely really difficult. And I look back now and I think like how was I coping through it? Like what was I doing that was helping me? And I realized that I was getting myself into states of flow. So I was finding things like I love learning. I love like crafty, creative stuff. So I was finding things that were new to me. So I learned how I bought a Cricut and I started like doing a bunch of crafty stuff.
Awesome.
I learned how
I'm
to
a
do a bunch of,
fellow crafter, so
yeah, I love it, right?
loving
And I
that.
don't even do it a lot now. That's the funny thing, but I needed it at that moment. And I learned a bunch of woodworking techniques and like use the scroll saw and make all these like cool signs and stuff, and redesigned my kids' bedrooms with like slides and tree forts and whatever.
Have
And
fun.
it was so fun, right? And that's what kind of just kept me busy more than anything.
So like you found something to be passionate about when the world shut down. Like you found light, really. Like you found sunshine in this like dark period of the world.
Yeah, I think it was like bits and pieces that I grabbed hold of, and that's what kind of kept me going throughout that. And then I did get to the point where I realized, like, I wasn't even sure what I was feeling at that moment, but I eventually realized that I was not feeling so well. Um, and then I had been doing these things almost without thinking to make myself feel better, and like you say, to shine to find that light. Um, and then eventually I actually joined a course because I love learning. So I did an applied positive psychology certification, which meant I was online twice a week, having conversations with people about real stuff and like stuff that is fascinating to me around like how we think and our brains work and what does help us bring that light and positivity. And now I'm like, okay, I felt more connected. I met people that are amazing people that were like excited about similar stuff to me. And I get to learn the skills that I needed in order to then teach them to other people. So that connection and that love of learning and just being able to find some of those resilience tools and do them on purpose is what made the difference in the end. Like, I'm a totally different person now. I'm so much more me.
Oh, I just
Basically.
love that. Like, do them on purpose. I
Mm-hmm.
love that so much because sometimes, you know, we find ways to cope. I mean, that's kind of our natural humanity, right? To
Mm-hmm.
find some way to keep going usually. But when we look back and we kind of analyze it and then we're like, yes, that's what I did. Let's open that up and highlight it and do it more on purpose. Like, what a difference that makes in like how we're feeling in the
Yeah,
moment.
definitely. And you feel like you have control of that again, right? It's like, oh, I'm not feeling so great right now. Okay, what am I going to do about that? Right. And then it's like, okay, here's the tools. And I actually have it on my list of things to do. I want to like almost have a list so that I can look at it in that moment and be like, here's what makes me feel good. And here's what does it, here's what's not going to make me feel good, but my brain's going to tell me it is going to make me feel good. Right. My brain's going to be like, let's go eat cake.
Dude, I was literally
Or
gonna say
like,
that. I was like, yep, yep. I have these apple turnovers that are my current obsession. It's like, go to
yeah.
that, go
Well,
to
it's
that.
Halloween candy around here right now, right? I had
Ooh.
to get my husband to take it over to the garage. Like, there's a suite above it. So I couldn't see it. And like, don't tell me where you put it.
I purposefully put like all the Halloween candy like out and out at once, and like we left to go pick up my husband, and I was like, yes, I know somebody might just take the whole thing. I kind of hope they do. And then they did. And then I was like, yay, now I don't have to like have that temptation anymore.
Exactly. We only had like 6 people come to our house, so it didn't work out in my favor for that one. So you always buy way too much. But yeah, you know, when you're in a moment of stress, you've been triggered in some way. Our brains are literally like, it's Amy, I call her in right there, right? Like your amygdala, our feelings brain is taking over. We can't think rationally. And it's saying, I feel bad. What has made me feel good in the past? Right. And it's like, well, if my habits have been eat bad food, sit and watch TV, laze about, like do nothing, then that's what my brain's going to want to do in those moments. So it's been it still is an active practice of choosing other things so that then eventually they become the go-tos. But yeah, I was thinking like, I want to write myself a list of like, this is what's going to make me feel good in those moments. Okay,
Yeah.
go for a walk, just 10 minutes, take the dog out. You need to do it anyways. Go now. Right.
Yeah. Instead
Or
of,
if
I was
you,
gonna say it's like sugar, sugar,
yeah,
sugar. Like we tend to just like go to sugar. And then it's like, yeah,
yeah.
that's gonna help you feel better for like 2 whole seconds. And
And then
then
it doesn't
and then
even
it's
like, you
done.
got all
And that's
guilt.
it.
It's just, yeah,
Yeah. And then it's worse. And
yeah,
it's like what we really need is something more long term. Like going on a walk actually helps you clear your mind and calm
yeah,
yourself down and like reevaluate and just like be in peace, you
yeah,
know, whereas the the unhelpful coping mechanisms are
yeah,
short-lived and shallow.
exactly. Yeah, the sugar or the alcohol or the whatever it might be. So I've kind of like surrounded myself with things that make it easy. So the podcasters won't be able to see, but I've got a bike right beside me right here, right?
That's
So
awesome.
sometimes if I'm just feeling stuck, even I just jump on my bike, and not like, don't get me wrong, so every once in a while I'll do a sweaty session, but it's more like I will sit there and watch a video, listen to a podcast, just stare out the window at the trees out there and just ride for a while, just really slowly, and force my body to move, where I can do that when it's too big a step for me to convince myself to get my shoes on, my coat on. It's wet, it's raining, it's cold, it's all the excuses,
Well, I was gonna
right?
say you live in Canada, so it's probably cold, like a lot.
So Vancouver Island is it's not as cold here. It's more wet, I would say, most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We're more like Seattle weather.
All right.
We're across the water. So it's an extra step to convince yourself. I was like, yesterday, I was like, I need to do some exercise. What am I going to do? I was like, I should go for a run. I should go for a run. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to go for a run. And you're telling your brain, I could go to the gym. No, I don't really want to go to the gym. And I was like, I can get on that bike and I either get sweaty or I don't, it doesn't matter, but I still move my legs. Right.
Yeah, I
So
love
anyways,
that.
my bike
That
is
our
there. So
mind,
movement. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, movement is so important. And then we get into this like
Huge.
state where we're like, but I don't wanna.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, finding a way to like, okay, here's the goal, but I can meet it halfway.
Yeah. The easiest possible way to get moving. Right. Or sometimes, depending on how stressed I am or whatever it might be, it's like pop some music on, and like upbeat music that will always make me smile and like start to move. Just like like I was stuck on something I was working on for my business, and I was just like dancing while I stared at the wall.
That's
And eventually
awesome.
my
What a
ideas flowed.
great, that's such a great like tactic. Like I'm feeling stuck. All right, instead of sitting there in this
Mm,
stuck place of like frustration that just builds and builds and builds,
yeah,
to put it aside for a minute and get your body like physically moving and flowing and going,
yeah,
because that just stimulates all the creativity.
totally. And I actually use it. We have dance moments with our kids frequently. Like I can tell that they're about to like, they're on the edge or whatever. I'm like, put the music on. And then they're like, I don't want to do it. And I'll just start dancing. I don't want to do it. And then eventually they do. Or they just start laughing at me because I'm
That's
doing it.
awesome. I
Yeah.
love that.
So movement's definitely a big thing. And the other one is like nature for me. Just getting outside is actually, if I can make myself go out, see water is my best one. If I can get in water, I feel 100% better. Like it's amazing. I've realized that that is definitely my best coping tool for life,
That's
I think.
awesome.
And sometimes that might just be a shower, but I'm intentionally like, actually I call them compassion showers to myself, and I will stand there and not do anything for even just 10 seconds and just let the water fall on my face and just like breathe, well, as much as
That
you can.
is that's amazing. No, that's like
Mm-hmm.
so amazing, because it's like this whole body experience where it's not just like you're sitting in a chair, trying to meditate or something, but it's like the whole body is encompassed in this like peaceful, life-giving water. Like I totally see how that is so therapeutic.
Hugely so, yeah. And we live near a lake, so in the warmer months I'll go and like jump in the lake and just, even only for like 2 minutes, it doesn't take very long, it's just I just want to like be there. It helps me a lot. And then so my office, I love my office. So I've got the bike on one side, I've got a hammock on my other side. So that's so like when I don't
Yay.
need movement or after movement or when I'm convincing myself I still need it, I'll just go lay in the hammock. Just
We
relax.
have recently discovered the like joy of hammocks. We have one in our living
They
room,
are so
and my son has one for his bed now. He sleeps in a hammock, and it's just
yeah.
like I'm amazed at how much like every member of my family gets benefit from having a hammock in my living room, which is annoying because it takes over like so much space. But
Mhm.
like it's such, I don't know, there's just something about that like effortless movement that just kind of like calms your body down.
I just like, well, it's hugging you, right? It's like you're getting a hug
Yeah,
without
absolutely.
being overstimulated. Sometimes I don't even want it to move. I just like, yeah. So that works really well for me. But I think just learning what along the way, like what helps, has just made such a big difference in those darker moments when like life seems really hard, or when your kid knows exactly what button to push,
Oh,
or
they always do, don't they?
oh, they do. It's like they're born to like, yeah, they're born to know the buttons. But also, I look at it like, I actually had this moment the other day. I was at this really cool thing called Mom Camp, but where I was writing out like a letter to my son. Not that I was going to give him so much, but it was like this like gratefulness letter, which is another way to like really get yourself out of a slump. And I realized that like he pushes me to my limits, and I'm so much better for it once I get through it. right? It's not good in the moment. It sucks. But I'm so much better for it. He's taught me that I can do more than I thought I could. He's taught me that I can feel bad and then feel good, right? Like, and he is like I said, he's all feelings are big in the land of him. And so when those are negative feelings or loud feelings in whatever way it is, he just teaches me that we can feel big instead of like holding it all inside, which is actually really beautiful. Like, what if we all did that? Maybe not so much like just yelled all the time, but
Well, and actually, I've been thinking about that one lately, like how much like yelling and screaming is frowned upon. Like if somebody just like felt like screaming for any reason at all, like
yeah,
everyone is going to be like, no, you can't do that. Shh. And I do that all the time, like to my
yeah,
kids, where I'm like, no, you can't just go around screaming. Like, what are people going to think? Like, you have to be calm. But it's like, actually, it's kind of healthy and therapeutic to just be like,
yeah,
you know what? This
yeah,
sucks. And like to be able to like express that, like we shove it down and
yeah.
hide those emotions because we're taught that that's the only socially acceptable thing. But like, we kind of
Yeah.
need that outlet and we don't
I
get it.
totally agree. Yeah, exactly. And so then there's the question of, so still living in the culture we do, how can we still enable that to happen? Well, there's two questions there. One is we either let it happen in public and we have to manage ourselves. We need to like dig deep and figure out why we're reacting to that. Or we say, okay, where could we have appropriate moments and spaces to allow that out, right? So like we were driving to school the other day and my kids were fighting in the car, and I was to my daughter, I was like, it seems like you're just feeling really frustrated right now. She's like, yeah. I was like, do you know what that's about? No. I was like, do you want to yell? And we all just yelled on the count of three really loudly. We're in a car, right? Like probably nobody will hear us. It doesn't, and if they do, they'll think we're a little crazy. But we just screamed at the top of our lungs, like I think about 3 times in the end, until we were all like, you feel better? Yeah, I do actually. Because you gotta get it out,
That's
right?
awesome.
Your system. Yeah. So
Yeah, I love that like let's find like obviously like we're going to work through our emotions and we need to like figure out why am I being triggered and how can I like help myself to not feel so triggered in the future. But like sometimes there's times when you just really have to let that out, and to find an appropriate outlet for that is kind of
yeah,
essential. Like we're going to have emotions and we're allowed to have emotions.
exactly. Exactly. And the more we press them down, the more they're just going to keep us stuck where we are and not let us move to where we want to be. Right. So I find all this stuff really fascinating, like anything to do with resilience and what can we do to like help ourselves, like expect that we're going to fall and help like prepare ourselves now for that so that we'll pick ourselves back up. Right.
Yeah, and I feel like we this is just an interesting like thing that is coming to me is just that when we become parents, it's so much easier to see and to analyze all these things as we look at our kids and our own behavior and we're like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't realize I had these, you know, deep-seated emotions. I didn't realize I had these traumas. I didn't realize I had these triggers
Mm,
until my kids, pushed just the right button and brought it out of me." And I'm like, "Oh, and how can I help them manage their emotions? But oh wait, was I managing my own?" And it's interesting how we are raising these, little people, and they have their
yeah.
own personalities and their own things, but as we help them to succeed, we realize how much more learning we have to do for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I learn something every day, honestly, about myself. And like, how do you have that conversation? My conversation with my son this morning was the sweetest one. When he's calm, he's just so sweet. We're driving up to school and he says, Mama, I don't really like being at school for long days. I said, yeah. yeah, I get that. And we call school, it's preschool, but I was like, yeah, I get that. He's like, I like being with you. I was like, yeah, I like being with you too. And we just kind of like sat with that. And it was kind of beautiful, right? He's like, I really love being with you. And I was like, I really love being with you too. And he's like, but all the time. And I was like, well, actually, not all the time for me, right? Like, I love being with you, and I love it more when I get to have time for me. And I need to do this work. And because he can't see what my work is all the time, because I'm just like, I'm just in this office in the house, and he doesn't fully understand it. But
That's
it's so
so
for him.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
he's a
such
cool kid.
that's such a great like conversation, and what a great like example that you are, that even to your young children, that like we need time for ourselves too. Like that's
Yeah.
actually really important, and it's a really great lesson for kids to learn. Not just that mom needs time for herself, but oh hey, maybe I also deserve to have time just for me.
Mhm. Yeah. And like, I know that I'm loved enough to be able to do that is almost what he was asking, right? Like, he's like, do you love me enough? And he's like, oh, what about his sister? Do you love her and being with her as much? And I was like, yeah, same amount. Of course, you're always going to have to answer that question. And he's like, so he was like comparing and like making sure that that was there. And I think it's so beautiful that we can have those conversations, because then in those moments when I'll take time away, I think he'll start to connect back to that conversation, right? And be like, okay, connect, 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 and now we can go apart for a bit. Connect, 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 go apart, right? It's like a little
It's
wave.
like a battery, like charging your connection battery.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Like
Yeah,
we charge it as we connect with people in a positive way, so that when we have maybe less positive interactions, we can go back to that positive energy and reframe. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And actually, the ability to recognize that, especially as a mom who's going to make mistakes along the way and who does things that we don't wish we didn't do, and all those things, to be able to recognize that you can reconnect, and it doesn't make it go away, but if you reconnect enough, usually like probably about 6 times more than you did for the one thing, right, then it'll balance itself again, right? And that's been definitely, I remind myself of that frequently.
Well, and it's so important that our kids have that example of, oh, I made a mistake, and like
Mhm.
verbalizing that with them, like, ha, I screwed up
Mhm.
because I'm also a human,
Exactly.
and I messed up,
Yeah.
but guess what? It's okay. And I'm gonna do what I can to make it better. And at the end of the day, like I did my best, even though that included a mistake, and that's okay. And then they can learn
Exactly.
that it's okay when they make mistakes, and that everybody makes mistakes, and that they're not, on an island. They're not alone. They're not the only person in the
Mhm.
world who messes up sometimes. Like that's all of us. And it
Yeah.
helps us feel closer together because we are open about our faults,
Yeah,
especially as mothers.
exactly. We're worthy even when we make mistakes. You're still worthy, right? Of everything.
And loved.
And loved. Exactly. And worthy of that love, right?
Absolutely.
That's such an important skill. Well, we might not necessarily use the word worthy with our kids because that's a pretty abstract word, but it's the emotion is there, right? That's what we're trying to teach them all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah,
So you guys moved in the middle of the pandemic. So
we
then
did.
you had a really hard time for a year while
Mhm.
you were really hoping to connect with people, and there weren't really people to connect to. And so you were able to connect with your inner passions, which I think is so great and so beautiful, and such a ray of sunlight that we can do that when the world is like crumbling around us, and we're like, all of these things are out of my control. What can I do? Oh, I can take a class. Or, oh, I can make something. There's something just so therapeutic about creation. about making something. And that can look a million different ways. Like, no matter, like, even if you're somebody who's like, I'm not crafty with my hands, which I love crafting with my hands. I just adore it. But like, for somebody who doesn't think that that's something they could do, I mean, writing is creativity. Like, digital
Yeah.
design is totally incredible and totally creative. Like, there are so many ways to use that creativity, and it is so powerful and so healing. So
Yeah.
then tell us what happened next. Like, how did you go from, this place of depression and struggle to where you are now and with your business and everything?
Yeah. So I took that course, and it taught me all these skills for myself, but also made me realize that that's what I've been trying to do with others for so long. And that with applied positive psychology, that's the science of it. It's like it's showing me that it's real what I've been trying to do, right? It's giving me, for my own sake more than anything, the credibility to go out there and do it with people. So I got to this phase where I started to like feel better within even just like a couple months of that course. And it was a 9-month course, that one. And I decided to do my coaching certification through the same organization called the Flourishing Center. And that was amazing. I got introduced to that world of coaching, which I'm just in love with, especially the style that they do at the Flourishing Center, which is very much this belief that you have within you everything that you need, and everything within you need, right? So a coach's job is literally just to like ask you the right questions and hold the space for you, and let you find them. And I think that's just so beautiful. And it helped me a lot to be taking the course, because of course, in order to become a coach, you're getting coached all the time and you're practicing coaching, and other people are practicing coaching on you. So I got to work through some of those big emotions that I had held down deep, right? And I realized that I had no closure when I left England because we did it so quickly. And I was still holding on to that. Like, even now, I can feel myself kind of like tensing at the concept of it, right? But because we left early, and because the pandemic was like in full swing by that time, we couldn't have the going away party. We couldn't, like, I went and knocked on some neighbors' doors and said bye because I felt like I just really needed to. But I think closure is a really important ritual. Like, we need the things to say goodbye to such a big part. So
And the
um
pandemic disrupted so much of that.
yeah,
it was just so upsetting to the normal routines of life.
yeah, yeah, it definitely was. And my routines completely shifted everything by moving across the world too. And I should say, I had a business while I was there that I had to close down. And it was this amazing community of ordinary super parents, we call ourselves. And I came here, and I just like couldn't, for that year, I couldn't see what my purpose was anymore, like, other than kids. What was my thing? And that's so not me. I'm like the one, like, we called ourselves the Change the World gang in England, right? Like, so here we so yeah, I took that coaching course, and then I started to see what my purpose was again. I
I
started
have
to
to
get
say,
my excitement back.
yeah, I feel like motherhood, we have to still be ourselves. We can't lose
Yeah.
ourselves in motherhood. That's such a pathway to like depression, is
Mhm.
forgetting who you are. Because
Yeah.
before we had kids, we were our own person, and we had passions and you know things that we just love to do, and we have knowledge and we have skills and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they help in motherhood,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to give it all up to serving your family and to
Yeah.
forget who you are. And not that motherhood isn't incredible and amazing and like, mind-blowing, and it will change you for the better. But if you forget who you are, you're not actually like there's a piece missing. It's hard
Yeah.
to teach your kids their own individual worth when you've kind of lost your own.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And as human beings, we are we are designed to seek connection, as we've discussed, but also to seek purpose. And for the first while, when our kids need us a lot in those first, few months, years, whatever it might be for people, we might feel that's enough, right? But after a while, they don't need us as much. And even mine, like, they're 4 and 7, they still need to be plenty, but you start to feel this need for, I say mom and more a lot. Yes, I'm mom and I'm more. And so I started to see that purpose, and that kind of flame and spark inside me came to light again. And I'm like, I want to go and make a difference in somebody's life. I want to go outside of these walls and feel like I am going to leave a legacy, and that I am going to make this world better. There's so many shite things that are happening in this world right now. I want to go and like fix them, right? Or at least help people manage the things that are happening that we wish weren't, right? So that's what I've been doing essentially. So I'm like, hey, I'm gonna run my own business, and I'm gonna I got my youngest into preschool, and I take some time for myself, and I start to find myself and realize that. And so now I run a business called Permission to Be Human, and it's for moms who have big audacious dreams and who want to go and change the world, and to really help them see that they matter, and to remember that they matter, and see their worth, both as humans and as change makers. Because I believe that it's the moms that are going to change the world. If we can empower moms to be everything they can, like, we have just this way of being that is what the world needs right now the most. And I just like think it's a shame that there's so many people that are stuck where I was. And I just want to get them to this place where they have these dreams, and they can move them forward, essentially.
That's so beautiful. I love it. I love that. That's just so perfect. Like, you are absolutely right that us, us women, us mothers are so powerful, but we forget, because it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day caretaking that we forget how much strength that we have and how much we can do in this world that is just so impactful.
Exactly. And it's the forgetting, but it's also, we've been taught to be small.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So when we start to be big, we're told not to, not necessarily directly, but we are in many other ways, right?
There's something about, like, we are just taught, it's just the way it is, that if you're a mother, you should only be a mother, or you're not doing that good of a job, because you should be spending every single ounce of energy you have being a good mother. And like,
but you should also have a job. And like,
you
they're
guys should also,
things,
right?
Like, you can't actually do everything they're telling us to do, right? You should, right? And it's just not.
It's not possible.
Impossible.
Yeah, and it's the expectations that are set upon us are unrealistic and damaging.
Yeah, exactly.
So damaging. Like, we are allowed to be human, just like so permission to be human. Like, we're allowed to have emotions and get angry, and we're allowed to struggle, and we're allowed to try again when we have failed. And
yeah.
And
we are allowed to have those big dreams that sound a little bit crazy, because that's not the way the world currently works. But it's only with those that we're going to make the world work better than it currently.
Absolutely. And I feel that just so much, like, to my core, because like I have 3 kids on the autism spectrum, and they are 12, 11, and 8. So they're, they're not in that like baby stage anymore, where they except for that they, still have special needs, and so it doesn't feel like that's ever going to go away. And looking around at other special needs parents, like, this is their whole life. Like, there's nothing else. And I grew up seeing, parents of disabled adults who like, that was their whole life. That was everything. And it was and I've always just been like I don't want that for my life. Like my kids are everything to me,
Yeah.
but so am I. Like I also, need to carve my own place out in this world. And I see that so much for special needs parents where it's like it's so much more burdensome. Like motherhood is so hard, like no matter what. But when have 10 times more doctor appointments and you have all these daily struggles and you're
Yeah.
expected to be the therapist and all of the things
An
that
advocate, like there's so much advocacy
oh
involved in
yeah,
anything related to
advocate, like
like,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean there's just so many like extra things that it's
yeah,
like, well, how could if you're not devoting every ounce of you, then your kid's not going to have their best possible future. And it's like, but maybe their best possible future includes a solid example of somebody who cares about themselves.
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. And if someone meets all their needs by being mom and mom only, then fantastic. If that is giving them a sense of purpose, fantastic. But I think for most it's not. And if it's the expectations and the shoulds that are stopping people, that's when it becomes a problem. And you're not showing them that, well, more importantly, on our side of it, we are showing them that example, like you say, that this is what you could do, and this is hard, and this is hard to do, both of these things. And your needs are going to have to wait just a second over here sometimes while I just meet my own, and then I'm going to better be able to meet yours, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And it's so important to like do the thing that feels right and inspired for you in that
mm,
moment, because it can be different from person to person, and it can change, frequently in our own lives. Like we get
yeah,
to change, we get
yeah,
to change our
exactly,
minds, and we get to evolve. And like at some
yeah,
points in our lives, like yeah, that motherhood thing is really like everything, because they need you so much at certain
yeah,
stages of life. But then that, it changes and it evolves and we grow and we learn.
yeah.
And so we have to like really make sure that we are in tune with our own emotions and our own needs.
Exactly. I still remember the first time that I went away overnight from my daughter, my first one, and she was 2.5. And it was the first time I went away for more than probably like 2 hours. And I went for like 5 days, which is a big leap. And I remember I was, we were in England, and I flew to New York for the Good Life project, the camp that they run. And I was like, anything adult camp, like summer camp, I'm in, basically. Just put the word camp on it and I'll be there. But so I flew over to do that. Meanwhile, I not a lot of people knew, but I was also pregnant with my second at that time. And I was like, I need to find me first. I can't have another, right? Like it was terrifying to me. And I remember being in the airport, and they came, my husband and my daughter came to the airport, and they said goodbye. Um, and it was kind of sad to say goodbye. But as they turned around and I started walking into the airport by myself, it wasn't so much the like sadness of saying goodbye to them, but I was tearing up because I went, oh, what do I do now? Who am I now? Right. And that's the first time that I was like, realized how connected I was to mom, that I'd just forgotten. I was like, I don't know what to do now. Like I'm allowed to just go get the food I want, like just
Yeah.
for the little
Well, and
things,
like I
right?
know, like I'm alone. There's nobody who needs something from me. There's no shoulds of like, this is what
Exactly.
I, because even when they're at school, it's like you should. Like there's
Mhm.
always the like, do the dishes, vacuum, clean all the things. And you're like,
Yeah.
should. And then you step in that airport and you're like, the shoulds are gone.
Yeah.
There's
And it
no,
was terrifying because it was such a drastic separation from the two, right? And it was terrifying because I hadn't realized I was in all the shits as much as I was, right? And I finally realized that in that moment. And I was just like, oh, well, that's got to change, right?
when that
And
freedom comes, do you know what to do with it?
yeah, and I didn't. Now I do. Now I'm like, give me the freedom and I will take advantage of it. But that's because I'm in a better place, and I'm more aware, and I'm just more aware of it, right? I'm okay. I'm willing to give all of this. And I know that this is where I need to go off by myself for a while and connect with someone on a like adult to adult human kind of level. And just feel heard is actually a big part of it. Cause I don't know if it's like this in your family, but my son especially, like I literally just get talked over all the time. I don't get listened to. I literally never finish a sentence. Like,
Oh yes. Oh
it's
yes.
just like,
No,
really, I just
it's like, is
finished.
anyone listening to me here? Like, I'm sitting here like, what's happening? Like, just ignore, like, mom's voice just gets drowned out because they're so
Yeah.
used to it, I guess.
Yeah. And that's where things like this, like we can have a proper full conversation and someone's truly interested in what we have to say. And don't get me wrong, my husband like wants to be interested in what I have to say, but he just doesn't have an opportunity to do so because my kids just talk over us at the table. And by the time the kids are asleep, one of us has fallen asleep with them or, whatever it might be. So it's yeah, it's intentionally seeking those spaces where we can have connection with other human beings is such an important thing. And
Oh, absolutely. It's so funny. Like, I started my podcast like a year ago and I was
mm,
struggling with it and I wasn't really feeling bright and amazing until I really started like feeling this connection and valuing this connection to people. And now I'm like, I crave this and it changes my whole day for the better. It lightens and lifts my mood like instantly because it's like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing is this like connection. Like we
yeah,
need it so badly. And like social media is not true connection. Like just blasting out some information about yourself, like it's not the same as having a conversation where you're looking at
yeah,
somebody and you're like really like you're interested in what each other has to say. And it's like
yeah.
it feeds our souls to connect to other people.
100%. And this is like, Zoom calls, which is what we're on in order to record this, is like 80% there, right? It still feeds it and you're still like craving more. And I realized now that I've started actually seeing some people in person, like going with neighbors out or having a drink with them or, the types of things that I wasn't doing for so long that that in-person stuff is just so good. Right? It's just so nice to
Oh
have.
yeah, and the pandemic, kind of destroyed all that for a while. And it's so hard for us to kind of snap out of this pandemic mindset, right? Like we get so
Yeah,
used to being like, I'm an individual, I have my family, we're a little bubble, we just do our thing because that's what we did in the
yeah,
pandemic. And now it's like, well, wait a minute, it's kind of over. Like we can do things again and we can
yeah,
life has changed, but let's not forget how important human connection really is.
yeah. And we're literally like have to retrain our brains again, right? So our brains, we've been training them to say people bad, right?
Right.
People scary,
People cooties.
right? Exactly. People cooties.
If I'm
And
around other people, I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die. Right.
exactly. And our brain, well, we logically know that isn't there anymore. Little Amy in there, like our feelings brain is saying, nope, people, right? Like I still sometimes see a picture of someone, I don't know, say like a group at a hockey game or a concert or something, and I'm like I
They're not
tense up
wearing
and
masks.
literally it makes my fingers want to go like, oh,
And you're like, where's their masks? They're not
you're
wearing
not
masks.
safe. What's
I
happening?
remember there
Right?
was a time during the pandemic when we'd be like watching TV or something and there'd be a group scene and I'd be like, they don't they don't have masks on. Like, what's going on
Yeah.
here? It's like, well, wait a minute,
Yeah.
they didn't need to wear masks. This was filmed, a while ago. Like this
Yeah.
wasn't even a thing. And
Yeah.
masks were so, prevalent for so long, but
Yeah.
it just became the norm. And so
Yeah.
like we changed the norm to something different, and now we have to change it not really back, but to another new normal.
Yeah. And we need to convince our brains now, we have to retrain them that we're safe, right? Even though the virus is still around and there's still lots of things in our life that aren't safe, we need to go back and retrain our brains to convince them that we are safe in our life right now.
It
And that's
is,
really hard to do.
and it's no
It's
way to
really
live to feel unsafe all the time.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah,
fight or flight. That is
yeah.
cortisol stressing you out, and that will make
But
us
it's
all
fight and
sick.
flight constant,
Yeah.
which is where depression, anxiety, and all the other things come from, right?
Yeah.
Fight and flight is great. We're designed to be stressed in certain moments, but we're not designed to keep it in us all the time. We're not designed to do it every single time we see a person, because that's going to be a lot, right? So the question there is, how do we retrain our brains to convince them that we're safe? And there's lots of things, some of which we've talked about, like going out and just doing the things that give us the positive feelings. But there's other things, like I learned this amazing technique from someone in my class called havening, which I love now and use with my kids too. And it's similar to the concept of tapping, if people have heard of that. So like there's certain spots on your body, but it's more like rubbing. So right now I'm rubbing my hands as if I'm washing my hands. And I do that when I'm happy, so that when I am stressed and I do it, it takes me back to a happy space. Right. And there's ones up here on your forehead, there's ones under your eyes, right? And just doing that, like if you like dance while doing that, so that you're getting all the good feelings going, then as soon as you need it in the hard times, it kind of, your brain's like, oh, this felt good, let's do that again, and it go back to like the good feeling stuff.
That's a really fascinating concept where you're associating this happy feeling with something that you can do when you don't have a happy feeling, so that it lifts your mood back up.
Exactly.
Really
and there's
cool.
all sorts of science that I can't even like tell you the detail of, because I won't remember the detail of, because I'm an outcome person. But there's all sorts of science of what that's doing with your nervous system and all sorts of things, because you're using touch, etc. But the outcome being, do it when you're happy, so that when you're not, it helps bring you back to that space. It helps calm your nervous system down.
I feel like there's a lot of evidence of that, like babies who suck their thumbs, like it's self-soothing. It's but then we're looking for like appropriate ways to do that as adults, and that's not it's not something that we have often been taught or thought about doing. But it's so much better to soothe yourself like in that kind of way than with cake or sugar or alcohol or whatever it is that has been your vice in the past, like finding other healthier ways
and in the moment to calm yourself. So like for example, going back to the conversation we were just having, the first flight I took post-pandemic, just a short one to Alberta, I was with my son, just my son and me. So there's a third seat. So I had to sit next to somebody, and they weren't wearing a mask. And I all of a sudden realized that I was in an airplane next to someone that, and my body, my brain had been trained to fear that situation. So I could feel myself getting tense. And I'm like, okay, like you got a mom here, like you got a job, we got to sort this out. So I ended up just doing that with my hands a little bit, because nobody they might wonder a little bit what you're doing, but it's not like too weird,
It looks like you're warming cold fingers.
Exactly. Exactly. Or I even just took my glasses, and I almost just looked like I was tired. So I was putting my fingers underneath my eyes and rubbing outwards, and I just did that for a bit. And because I'd trained my body before that, it did calm me down. Like not 100% all the way there, but it definitely took me from, the height to the lower. Which enabled me to go through the flight and not think about it too much. Distraction is good as well when you're doing that, if someone wants to try it. So I might be doing that with my hands, going back and forth, but also I'll be like literally looking around. I do it with my son a lot. If he's like in hyper emotion mode, I'll just be like, let's find the rainbow. And we look around, and it's like red, orange, and we're looking at and finding the colors all around the room, and we're distracted.
Yay! It's literally seeking sunshine. It's literally seeking sunshine. You're like, that's such a cool tactic. Oh my gosh, I love that. Find the colors. That is beautiful. I really love that.
It's one of the absolute easiest things you could do. Highly recommend for anybody who wants. And kids are generally, if you just tell them to do it, they might not do it in the moment if they're like in super emotion mode. But if you just start doing it, then they kind of like, what are you doing? Like, why are you talking about colors? Or my daughter, who really likes math, I could be like, can you like tell me, count backwards from 30 by 2? And she'll be like, oh, and you have to think about that, right? It's like, you have to think quite hard about that. And an adult, you might say something like, by 3, but it's from 73 or 71, or do you know what I mean? Like it's tricky. You have to really work on it. It doesn't
I
matter if you get it
love
right.
that. That's a
But
great tactic to distract your brain
yeah.
from, from anxiety, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And to say, and it's calming Amy. It's calming that feeling brain and just saying, it's all right, actually. Like, there's no tiger chasing me right now. I'm good. We're good. And then once she's calm, you can start to think about whatever it is you're trying to think about and problem solve. But
Yeah, I have this method that I don't know, it just like came to me one night, this like breathing
mm-hmm,
technique that has a similar
mm-hmm,
distraction. I don't know, I think I'm calling it like the 5 by 5 by 5, where you breathe in for 1 second, you breathe out for 1 second, and you do it one time. Then you breathe
mm-hmm.
in for 2 seconds, breathe out for 2 seconds, and you do it two times. And then you breathe in for 3 seconds, breathe
Yeah,
out for 3 seconds, and then you do it three times. And because you have all these
yeah,
numbers going on, like you're counting up to three, and then you're counting on your hands,
yeah,
and then you do that all the way up to five. And it takes you from like this panic breathing really fast because your first one's really fast to like really quickly like slowing your breathing down
yeah,
in a manageable way. Like it meets you at the anxiety level that you're at, but it
yeah,
distracts you because you're having to count one, because you can't count multiple things at the same time.
yeah,
So you're like, how many times have I done this one? Okay, I'm counting it on my fingers, but I'm also counting in my head. And that level of
yeah,
distraction, plus obviously like slowing down your heart rate and your breathing, like
yeah.
calms you right down. So that distraction that's such a great technique
I
to
love that.
help
I
us.
love that you've used both the breathing, which breathing is like our most powerful tool. But if we just say, okay, breathe, and you're just I
Well,
am
and
breathing,
what I
right?
find is like people are like, okay, you need to breathe slowly. And you're like, but I'm breathing really fast. And if you go from really fast to
Yeah,
suddenly really slow,
yeah,
like your brain's
yeah,
like, no, I'm not gonna do that. But if you start with one, like
yeah, yeah. And you've distracted yourself by having to think about it. So you're not thinking
yeah.
breathing, but you're
And so
thinking about something else.
it meets you where you're at and helps you come down
Yeah,
instead of just being like, well, you're panicking, you need to stop. You're like,
I
but
know.
that's not helpful right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's so many times that as women, as moms, as entrepreneurs, for those that are, that we get ourselves, we realize we're not going anywhere because we're actually feeling really stressed about something. And it's easy to want to just push through it. But in the end, if we use techniques like the ones we just used, then, or even as simple as jumping on a bike or doing a dance or whatever it might be, then you're going to get so much farther faster in the end, right? And it's giving ourselves that grace in that moment to just be, actually just be
Yeah.
it.
Just be well, and you're not piling on, you're not adding on to that stress, because that stress
Mm-hmm. With
builds and
shoulds.
builds and builds and builds
Yeah,
and builds
I'm
until it
stressed, then I'm
explodes.
stressed, then I'm stressed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so then if you're stopping the stress in its tracks
Mm-hmm.
and you're going, okay, I can breathe through this, I can find some method, I can ride a bike, or even as I can go outside, I can go jump in some water. Like there's something I can do to stop that stress and get rid of it. So then
Yeah,
it's not building up for the future. So then you don't explode on your kids or your husband.
yeah,
Right? So that when
exactly.
something goes wrong in your day, because it will inevitably,
Mm-hmm.
you're not ready to burst. It's not the cherry on the top, it's not the straw that broke
Exactly.
the camel's back, because there's enough room to deal with it and come back down.
Yeah,
And dealing with it in the moment makes that possible, instead of, the way that we normally do it, which is
yeah,
not healthy. And then we regret our behaviors because we, act out of stress. And then as we can teach those tactics to our kids, they are also becoming better humans for it.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I find with the women that I work with who are working on something that's very big, that's out of the norm, that it it it's even more important to do that, right? Because we're going to be, if our bucket is full, we're not going to manage, because there's going to be a lot of things that go wrong when you're going big, right? So like all those things we just said are just so applicable, that and integral to succeeding in whatever that word means to you. Yeah. for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Is there anything you want to leave us with before we head out?
Yeah, well, so thank you for having me. Firstly, I absolutely love talking about all things resilience, and seeking that sunshine is such a beautiful twist to put on it. Seeking rainbows, I almost think about it now.
I
That's
love it so much. That's
that.
beautiful.
And I think it really fits with our conversation that we were having about how motherhood fits with purpose and everything like that, that there's a lot of guilt that comes up in there as well. And I have created a free resource for that, which I think is really fascinating and I'm happy to share with people.
Wonderful. I'll put it in the show notes
Yeah.
so everyone can
So
get
put
it.
it on there. Basically, I went and I interviewed a bunch of people who are now adults who when they were kids, their parents were entrepreneurs, and said, like, what was that like? And what did you learn? And what went well? And what do you want to say to your parents? That's the best question that came in the end.
That's such
And
a cool,
like made me well up.
perspective.
Yeah. So it's titled something like What Your Kids Really Want to Tell You, essentially about you following your dreams. And it's if you're in need of reading something that will tell you that you should pursue your dreams and that your kids will tell you that, then this is what it is. And well, you can put that in the show notes, but it's just on the website permissiontobehuman.ca, and then it's slash guilt-free-dreams, I think. Yeah.
Yay, thank you so much. I'm so excited to go check that out.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. It was really fun to put together.
That's really amazing. Well, thank you so much. You've just shared so much. And we're absolutely going to put all that in the show notes. Thank you for being here and for sharing all your beauty and wisdom with us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I hope you have a really amazing day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Oh man, that was so beautiful. I just loved having Mel on and hearing everything she had to say and teach us. I learned so much from her and from how she's been able to come back to herself no matter what was going on. So here are my very favorite takeaways. Number 1, we need as humans to be connecting with other human beings. Number 2, that connection, that love of learning, and just being able to find some of those resilience tools and do them on purpose is what made the difference in the end. Number 3, movement stimulates creativity. Number 4, creativity is therapeutic. Number 5, you have everything within you that you need. Number 6, it's hard to teach your kids their own individual worth when you have forgotten your own. Number 7, as human beings, we are designed to seek purpose. Number 8, I believe it is the moms that are going to change the world. Number 9, we are allowed to have those big dreams that seem a little crazy. And number 10, we get to change. We get to change our minds. We get to evolve. Do not forget to go find Mel's website, permissiontobehuman.ca, and then she had this amazing free gift. You have to go check it out because it is so, so cool. It is so inspiring, and I'm so grateful that she is giving that to us. It is at permissiontobehuman.ca/guiltfreedreams, and of course that link is in the show notes, so go check that out. You can also find more from me at my website, which is KaraleighGarrison.com. Please, 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 if you loved this episode, share it with somebody, especially, another mom who is feeling really overwhelmed and who could use something uplifting in her life. Share it with your friends. I know that there's so much that this episode can bring to the world. Thank you again, Mel, and I hope you guys have such a beautiful, incredible day. It means so much to me that you listen to this podcast. And don't forget to come back next week. We have lots of incredible guests coming up, and I'm going to leave you with a song. I heard it would be worth it, but still I hesitate. So many just enjoy the ride. but that's not how I feel inside. Up, down, just wanna touch the ground. Up, down, I don't feel safe or sound. Going against gravity. Is this how life is supposed to be? I've got to learn how to let go, but I cannot help but fight for control on this roller coaster. This roller coaster. Forcefully it's pulling, constraining violently. So long I felt the pain, wondered if I'm going insane. These bars feel like a cage, but perhaps they keep me safe. For freedom I call and come, but with it I would fall. Up, down, just wanna touch the ground. Up, down, I don't feel safe or sound. Going against gravity. Is this how life is supposed to be? I've got to learn how to let go, but I cannot help but fight for control on this roller coaster. This roller coaster. There's pain pressing on my chest. I'm trying my best. I know I'm supposed to endure, but how I'm not quite sure. Alone it feels unfair. Is anyone there? Suddenly I see the one who rides with me. Up, down, just wanna touch the ground. Up, down, I don't feel safe or sound. Going against gravity. Is this how life is supposed to be? I've got to learn how to let go, but I cannot help fight for control on this roller coaster. On this roller coaster.